Hey everybody, welcome back to another video about geology and media. Today we're going to be talking about video games and more specifically Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is, well, Dark Souls of video games, meaning that it's both extremely hard and fun to play, but if you've ever wondered what those materials that you're using to upgrade your weapons are in real life, well, you've come to the right place. To start it off, we've got the Titanite shard, and judging by the pictures I've seen, description, and use, which is for upgrading weapons, my best assumption for this is likely hematite or hematite, a common iron oxide and ore used for extracting iron in real life. It's one of those ores that is very easy to process given its high content of iron, and thus it's likely to be it, which is making sense at least to me because Andre is a blacksmith and blacksmiths use iron, and he's always, having that big old grin when you bring him some shards, and to be honest, it's a little creepy sometimes, but I'll overlook it. Moving on, we have the Twinkling Titanite, which is also used to upgrade weapons of a particular kind. The problem with identifying the real-life counterpart of this material is the conflict between the name and the actual look of the mineral, which is very difficult for me to draw any similarities between the regular version of Titanite, which is an iron ore, and this crystal. They don't look related to me at all. And Titanite shards are usually found all over the place, whereas Twinkling Titanites are mostly found after putting a crystal lizard out to pasture. Poor little guy. The crystals on the backs of the crystal lizards mostly remind me of something like beryl, given the similarity in crystal structure and coloration, which would coincide with aquamarine, the light blue variety of beryl. The color can be attributed to Fe2+ ions, which is iron 2 ions, in case you mineral maniacs were wondering. So it must be aquamarine beryls that were prying off the corpses of cute little lizards, right? Well, while the hardness will make it pretty strong as a mineral, it's not an ore like hematite, so nobody is really going out infusing their blades with aquamarine beryls in the real world either. Not that anybody's infusing any blades these days, but that's besides the point. So I gotta assume that in the in-game world, it kind of has some magical properties associated with it to make it an upgrade material. Otherwise, Andre would probably be collecting them for his jewelry set that he has at the back. Next up, we have one of my favorites, which would be the fire gem. Now, what could possibly have the look of a cube as a mineral besides pyrite, which is fool's gold, and have a really deep red hue? Well, I would have just said vanadinite if I wasn't sure, and it has the right hue, just not the right crystal structure, which in this case it's cubic and vanadinite is hexagonal. So moving on from that, we do have something called rhodochrosite, which is a manganese carbonate mineral that typically forms and has a rose red to pink color depending on the concentration of the impurities inside that specific specimen. Rhodochrosite can occur as a hydrothermal vein mineral along with other manganese minerals in low temperature ore deposits, and yes, it is an ore, and manganese too, which is a key component of low-cost stainless steel formulations and certain aluminum alloys. So that marks off all of the essentials. 1, is it an ore? Check. 2, does it match the crystal structure? Check. And does it have the right color? Which it can, so that's a check in my book too. Now we have the refined gem, which is a difficult one, and to be honest, a bit of a doozy for me. Well, I do believe that it's Sphalerite, or at least I initially thought it was, which is a zinc sulfide mineral with some substitutions of iron to replace the zinc. Now, what's fascinating about Sphalerite is that it's one of the most important ores of zinc. Around 95% of all primary zinc is extracted from sphaleritic ores. Zinc is super important for alloys, which is used for galvanizing steel against corrosion and stuff like that. So in the world of Dark Souls, if they had the means of processing it, Sphalerite would be both beautiful and practical in its use. The only issue here, again, is the crystal structure. You can make out in one corner the almost hexagonal shape of it, and Sphalerite is unfortunately cubic. On the chance that the refined gem is cubic, which is also known as isometric, it would probably be magnetite, which is similar to hematite since both are iron oxides. It's a bit difficult to tell since some of the gems seem almost unnaturally sharpened, something similar to something like flint, which is often made into arrowheads or knives, and anyway, that's my best guess for this one. Next up, we have our heavy gem, which is, to me, the actual design of the gem seems to include multiple crystal systems, hexagonal and orthorhombic, and there's definitely a crystal point that's hexagonal here that would be something similar to smoky quartz, which is essentially quartz that has been irradiated to some point, damaging the crystal structure and thus affecting the way that it would reflect light and therefore appear kind of black. The other crystals there seem something similar to the iron oxides that I've already been discussing, or galena, which is a lead sulfide of a similar look to what we see there, although not quite the right structure. I would have reserved this sort of look to something like the raw gem, which is pretty much a dead ringer to galena. The shriving stone looks something similar to pumice given the very porous look to it and beigeish color. I don't really see how the effect of reversing transfusion effects on a weapon in game translates to real life though, since there's nothing similar in use to really compare it to. From what I've gathered, the next one that I've been looking at, the crystal gem, seems very similar to titanium coated quartz, since it is both hexagonal and bright blue. Due to the very bright blue color, it leaves me with very little options when it comes to the crystal system it belongs to. Titanium coated quartz is not really something you find in nature, rather it's usually naturally formed quartz that is taken and then treated to look like this. While I'm not a fan of synthetic minerals and heat treated crystals, I can really appreciate the technique that's involved in making them and their apparent beauty to some. So here we have the hollow gem, which looks almost organic to me. Vein-like is the first thing that comes to my mind, and now since we're talking about vein-like structures for a mineral, the first and most notable thing that comes to my mind is maybe native silver, and silver is rarely found as a native element mineral, but when it is, it's usually associated with quartz, gold, copper, sulfides, or other metals, and silver-related minerals as well. And anyway, if you've seen silver, or are probably aware of the color of it, you probably know that it's not dark as the hollow gem, so there's probably going to be some significant tarnish to make it this particular color. Now, it would probably be, I think, at least for the tarnish, some sulfide of some sort. And also, if you're wondering about the shape itself, it would be what we'd call a wire, since oftentimes natural silver would have that kind of wire look to it. So if you wanted to look it up, that's probably what you'd have to search for to get that kind of shape. Next up, we have the deep gem, which is similar in shape to the raw gem or the fire gem. And this is pretty easy in my opinion. I gotta say it's probably fluorite, and since fluorite is cubic and can have that kind of deep blue hue, also it can have this kind of violet look to it, which I do have some in my personal collection that looks exactly like that and is violet. In terms of industrial use, acid grade fluorite is used in the production of AlF3 and cryolite, which is Na3Al F6, which are the main fluorine compounds used in aluminum smelting, which of course would then tie it into the use it has in Dark Souls, which is of course for weapons. The blessed gem is kind of hard to see past all that glimmer and shine, but I'm fairly certain that it's either between citrine, which is the orange-yellow variety of quartz, or sulfur, which is sulfur, and you know, that has that kind of bright yellow color to it that we're looking for. And the use could be magical in the world of Dark Souls, since I haven't really found an important industrial use for either in smelting, so I'll have to leave it on that. To shotgun the last few I have an idea on, the Chaos Gems look a bit similar to something like Ferruginous Quartz, which can be colored red due to iron inclusions. As I just mentioned before, citrine, due to its high potential as a bright yellow crystal, is my closest guess to what the Lightning Gem could be off the top of my head at least, considering the crystal structure as well. Amethyst for the Dark Gem, and then Fluorite again for the Simple Gem. And yes, Fluorite can look like a cube as we saw before, and also this pyramid shape. Besides that, I know there's a few more upgrade materials in the game, but for those, either I couldn't find anything similar to it in real life, or I simply ran out of time to go over it, since I know I'll probably be rambling a lot by this point, and the information will likely not be absorbed by anyone anymore. So that's pretty much the case for my lecturers when they decide to cut short, so I'll be taking a tip from them and decide to call it here. For this particular video, if you have any thoughts for the types of items that these gems could be, or these crystals, or whatever you'd call them, be for minerals besides the ones that I've mentioned, I'd really be happy to hear it, since it's always a pleasure for me to learn and remember some minerals that I may have forgotten. Also, I find it very surprising that there's no green ones in here. It's my favorite color, and they don't have any, you know, they're doing my favorite gems wrong by not including them. So please, if they ever do make a Souls game, that would probably be my only request. And if you like this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up, or perhaps subscribe for more content in the future. My schedule is a little bit inconsistent, but I do try to aim for a video a week, roughly. If you have any suggestions for videos in the future, please let me know. It could be video games, shows, or animes, or anything like that. thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.